Thank you. Hi everyone, and thanks to the Geodirectory for asking me to come along today. I'm Deborah John from the Strategic Planning team in the National Transport Authority, and we'll just have a look at the connectivity analysis we've been doing for the last few years. A little overview, we'll look at why we've been developing these connectivity tools, what ones we have developed, how you use them, and then a few plans for the future. So why we've developed the tools, 3 reasons really. The first one is to accompany our ABTA methodology, and that's our area-based transport assessment. And this is a methodology that the NTA along with TII came up with to work with local authorities when they're doing their local transport plans. It's just a hierarchy of networks to work through when you're going through a local transport plan. We also wanted to look at standard methodologies that could be adopted by all local authorities. 10-minute, 15-minute cities is really hot topic at the moment. Everyone's looking at it maybe at a slightly different way. There was an idea that maybe we could all start looking at it in a similar manner. And we also wanted easy to use tools, ones that run quickly, that can help the local authorities when they're going to measure connectivity. So a little bit just a background on what a local transport plan is. So a local transport plan, it's a representation of national, regional and metropolitan transport policy at the town level. So it can depend, what's in the transport plan can depend on the size of the town, the scope for sustainable travel in that town, and if there's already a major infrastructure project happening in that town. And the critical outputs for it is your networks. Okay, so like I say, there is a mode hierarchy. So if you're looking at walking, the proposal would be that all major trip attractors and generators will be connected by sustainable and safe pedestrian routes. And that thinking then follows through into cycling, public transport, and then your general traffic. Along with that, looking how people are connected to their public transport, to their local services. It's a really important part of the local transport plan. And then for the planners to be able to, like, when they come out with their proposed interventions at the end, to be able to test those interventions to see what impacts they've had. So that's where we came in. So we looked at these 2 tools, our ATOS, which is our Access to Opportunity and Services, and our PTALs, which is the Public Transport Accessibility Levels. When we were thinking about looking at standard methodologies, this kind of was at a 2 stage. There's the policy side, there's the data side. So at the policy side, this was our planners working with local authorities, looking at sizes of towns and saying, well, what do I expect a town the size of 5,000 population to have in terms of services? So do they have 2 primary schools? They should have 4 GPs, that kind of idea. So putting a benchmark on different types of towns. And then on the GIS side, the data side, it's standardizing your data, maintaining your data, one source. So for the network, a well-maintained walk network that we can all use and feed into. And then looking at the last one was an easy-to-use toolkit. Myself and my colleague, we've been at this for a long time. We've looked at lots of different tools and different methods. And then we came across this report from Transport for London, assessing transport connectivity in London. And that was brilliant. It was a nice, easy to follow toolkit. They look at connectivity, not just trying to use one tool to answer all the questions. They use a number of tools. So they use the PTAL tool to look at just access to your transport node, not where it can bring you, but just how close are you to it. They'll look at time travel mapping. So this is how far, this is like the ATOS tool. So how well connected in journey time are you to your local services? And then a more GIS basic kind of catchment analysis. So how, if you travel 30 minutes, walk, cycle, public transport, what number of services are within that kind of catchment area? So this is why we went with this methodology. It's tried and tested, so we thought it was a good place to start. Again, they're GIS tools. So on their own, they paint a picture, they tell you a lot of information. Strengths of GIS, you start layering it with other data sets, you get more insights into your data. So the tools we've developed like I say, the access to opportunities and services, and the public transport accessibility levels. So we'll start with the access to opportunities and services. And this one, like I say, it measures how connected you are to your local services and employment. The Transport for London one, do walk, cycle, public transport. We just initially were concentrating on walk and cycling for this one. It was just, it was a quicker win. So we calculate for 6 different service types: your access to employment, your primary, secondary education, retail, mainly food shopping, convenience shopping, your local GPs, and open space. And our data sources for those, traditionally in the 2016 census, we had the CSO workplace zones, which was like your daytime population zones, which gave us an idea of employment. They're not out yet. Hopefully we'll get them for 2022, but we do have anonymised small area census data that we can use for employment. For the education places, we get that data from the department. For the retail and the GPs, we use our geodirectory. We use the NACE codes to define where those services are. And for open space, we use the development plan zoning. Transport for London, when they were building ATOS, they were just looking at the metropolitan area. So they were quite prescribed. So when they were running their calculation, you had to find 3 primary schools, or you had to find a particular number of services. We wanted to roll this out across the country so that all local authorities could use it. So we had to make it a bit more flexible. So we allow the user now, they can choose how many services they think they should be able to access within their given journey time. So we'll just pretend we're going to run a calculation. We'll build up what you need for your calculation. So you need your 100-metre grid. So this is your origin point for all your calculations, the centroid of each grid point. It'll be your analysis results there as well. You need your service type location. So here's your retail centres. You need your network data set because you're going to be calculating your walk along the route. And you need your study area boundary. Your study area boundary is important because your calculations all happen and are scored within that, and I'll explain that now in a second. So the calculation, you need all those data sets, and it's going to ask you 2 questions. So it's going to ask you, how many services do you think you should be able to access within what journey time? So we're going to say in this town, we think you should be able to access 1 retail unit within 10-minute walking, okay? So what the calculation is going to do now, it's going to select all the grid squares within your study area. It's going to calculate the journey time along the network from the centroid of each of those to its closest retail centre. For all of the ones that can do it within your journey time, your 10-minute journey time that you said, it'll find out what's the average and then what's the standard deviation. And then it'll plot an image like this, okay? So you can see the score, red score is your best, A down to E, the dark blues. And your score, each grid square is scored based on how it performs to the average. So is it 1 standard deviation away, 2 standard deviations away from the average? You can see that in the legend on the side. So the image is, as you'd expect, best accessibility close to where the service types are. But it's this kind of image is really useful for kind of permeability analysis. You can start to see where maybe some little small changes in your walk network might improve accessibility for people. If you see a sudden drop off between the red down to a blue, you might go, what happened there? What's stopping that access for people? If I bring it back to the local transport plans, so people are using this as part of their baseline analysis, going through their assessments of their different options of scheme interventions that they're going to do. And I forgot to say this bit first, sorry. But when you have this as well, the GIS part, you're starting to overlay information. So this one here, you can start putting your geodirectory data on the screen. You can start counting your household units within each different band. So you can start putting numbers on the picture for yourself. So then back to your your local transport plan. So you've decided you're going to put in new cycle track, you're going to start connecting routes that weren't connected before, and you want to see what kind of impact this will have on accessibility for people. So you run your calculation again after you've edited your network, built it so that it's a properly connected network. You run your calculation. They don't take too long to run, as long as your study area isn't that big, 15 minutes. And you can start to see already that the red area has increased. The whole area that's accessible altogether has increased as well. And if you compare it to your before, you've got your before and after scenarios, you can start to get some kind of idea of the impact of your schemes. Again, overlay it with your geodirectory information. You can start to put numbers on the picture. You can overlay it with other information like your development plan, zoning maps. If you look at your census, if you're looking for schools, you can look at just your age groups to see how the particular demographic areas are being served by their local services. You can look at the mode share. So if you've got high accessibility, is it correlating that you then have a good mode share for walk and cycling? That kind of idea. So the second tool then is our PTAL, so public transport accessibility levels. And this tool combines the walk or cycle journey time to a public transport stop with the level of service that's at that stop. So in general, you will have a higher PTAL if it's a short walk to your nearest station or stop. There's short waiting times. If you have multiple services, so not just one high frequency service, you've got a few different bus routes passing your stop, and if you are near a major rail station. The data sets that we needed to calculate the PTAL, we already had available in the NTA. So it's the same origin grid that we used for the ATOS calculations, generated that in-house. For our destinations, you're using your public transport stops. Our transport technology team produced our journey planner. From that, you can get what's called a GTFS file, which contains the location and routes of all public transport along with their timetabling information. And from that timetabling information in the GTFS file, we can start to calculate the frequency at stop that we need. The calculation itself is quite straightforward. So what you do is you choose your origin grids. You can choose a particular study area. You can do the whole county. Doesn't matter. So you calculate your walk or cycle time again from each origin grid point to your closest to your PT stops that are within. This time it has to be within a distance. So you have to be within 640 metres to your bus, 960 metres to your rail station. In the TfL version, they did one time period. They did 8:15 to 9:15. We found when we looked at this, it didn't fit for a lot of the, say, commuter towns who would maybe have to put their services on between 7 and 8 because that's what you need. You need that much time to get into town. So we just allow the user input whatever time period they want to use themselves. So you calculate the standard waiting time, which is basically half your frequency. So if your bus comes every 10 minutes on average, you'll be waiting 5 minutes for a bus. On top of that, you add a reliability factor because for a bus and train, they're slightly different. A bus has potential to get caught in congestion, train less so. So your reliability factor for your bus is higher. So it goes off and it calculates its access index for each individual grid, and then it ranges them into your PTAL level. So this is what they use in London. So they have dark blue as 1A is the lowest score, going up to 6A or 6B. Bright red is their best score. And they've just, in the centre there, you can see they've just ranged the access index scores as they see fit. Doesn't look great in Dublin. We have a very different PT network. It's not as dense, it's not as frequent. You know, it is very different. So when you map up Dublin, it makes sense. The city centre is the best, as you'd imagine. You can start to see the radial routes a little bit coming out. The N11 has a huge amount of private services as well as, you know, your Dublin bus services, Dublin airports coming out. So it makes sense. But if you can imagine, we wanted to use this across the whole country, it's not going to look great. Poor old Navan was just dark blue. So it was like, that's not fair. You won't get anyone to use an image like that in their documentation. So we said, okay, we need to go back and have a look at this again. So we just started looking at the data in the background, having a look at the averages in the different countries, in the different counties, and what the data is telling us, and then doing a visual check as well. So when you're looking at the different cities, where's the cutoff? Where you'd see the city centre, where this is where your density of network is. So what should we be seeing? So we came up with just 4 banding instead. So we're going to see how it goes. We may have to change it, but for the moment, this is what we've come up with. So we noticed that anything over 14 of an access index, that was kind of your core city centre areas and your high frequency services. So when I map it up now, it looks a lot better, I think. So still makes sense. Highest level of accessibility in your city centre areas, but you can start to see the radial routes are much starker. You can mark much brighter now. The suburban areas are lower, but they're still not terrible. And then the rural routes are a lower level of service. Is what you'd expect. It's all relative to what you expect your area should get. And if you look at Navan now, it's much better. So the core of Navan has a medium to high level of service now. Navan has its own town centre services, so you can start to see that probably coming out of the southeast of the image there. So it was a much better picture, I think. Just to have a little look at our future connectivity analysis and plans. So we want to look at the future for PTALs, so that we can see the impact of some of the major infrastructure schemes. So we have a national multimodal transport model in the NTA that codes in all the future schemes for their business case analysis and stuff like that. So we're working with the modelling team to try and extract timetabling, location information from that model to create a GTFS file, because once we have the GTFS file, we can run a future PTAL. We also have our PTALs on our website now at the moment. It's just a map viewer, so you can view the PTAL for May 2024. The plan is to update that annually. In the few weeks, the data will be available to download and use within your own organisations for your own analysis. Just a bit of work to be done there. The third toolkit that TfL were using was the catchment analysis. So we do want to go start look at that. We don't see we have to do any development. There's GIS tools there that do it now for walk and cycling. We can do it by drive time analysis for public transport as well. So we're going to start looking at that. One of the big ones is the underlying data. So that walk network is hugely important, that it's kept up to date, that all the walk links, permeability routes are included. When we start looking at the future, there'll probably be a need to update it, like a scenario of what, in a greenfield development, what the walk network in that greenfield development would be like, so that we can do a proper test. Guidance documents. So we've built the tools now, we've put them out, we're hoping people will use them, the local authorities will use them. But we need to put some kind of guidance documents out there so that we all know when we're looking at particular images what it is we're expecting to see, how we're supposed to be using them. And the data analysis portal. So like I say, PTAL is on our website, going to do it annually, so it's okay. ATOS at the moment, we run the calculations for the local authorities when they're doing their local transport plans, which is fine, but I'm sure it would be great if they could have a self-service portal. So that's what we'd like to develop next, is to have a portal where people can go on and run these calculations for themselves. Thank you very much.